rake's progress.
Hey Abby, that camera's flash is on. The flash on that camera is on.
I think, you want to, should we remain masked?
Either way, it's up to you all, whatever you prefer.
It's a nice.
I can breathe.
It's a nice group.
It's okay for the time. We'll figure it out. We're already going. Okay. Great. Well, welcome everybody who's here in the house with us. We have a couple folks joining us in house today for our master class, and I'd like to say hello to all the folks at home watching the live stream. Thank you so much for joining us for this wonderful Q&A and interview. Before we get going here, I'd like to make a couple thank yous. We'd like to thank the Ann Arbor Area Community Foundation, who helps us put on the Passing the Torch series here at Carytown Concert House. We're really grateful for their support. And also, all of our Salon Series concerts are sponsored by some great supporters of the house, friends of the house, people that we really love here, Mari and Linda Binko, who are also in the house with us today. So thank you to them as well. Yeah, this series has been really wonderful for us at Carytown Concert House. It's been a great opportunity to get to know some incredible rising musicians, who are destined to make an impact here in southeastern Michigan. And also, it's been a wonderful opportunity to, once again give our roses and our utmost thanks and gratitude to the heroes of music and the heroes of our community. And no two people exemplify any of that more than who we have with us today on our stage, which is George Shirley and Olivia Johnson. Please join me in welcoming them. Great. So yeah, thanks so much for being back with us again for the part two of this series. It's really been awesome to see you all work together and see the concert that you all put on last time around was just so phenomenal in every single way and such a beautiful experience. And so I want to kind of start here and talk about how you two actually first met. I believe it was at the university, but maybe I'm mistaken. But so maybe Olivia, you want us to start there?
I don't know if Professor Shirley remembers. It wasn't a big moment. I walked into his studio with Koswana Kenyenda at the time, which was one of his students. Her and I went to East Carolina University for 1 year, our freshman year, then she transferred. So longtime friends, also a wonderful mezzo. She told me about this university. I wanted to go. I ended up getting in, but while I was there auditioning, I asked Professor Shirley if I could sit in. He said, okay, go ahead. It was very simple, very matter of fact. And so I sat in and I just watched him, and I thought it was wonderful. But it actually took a year later for me to become one of his students. And then after my master's was completed, I continued to study with him for a couple more years. Yeah.
Wow, that's really beautiful. And I wanted to talk about that specifically of in this series we're talking a lot about the concept of mentorship and how important that is on a day-to-day basis in our communities, and not only as musicians but just for all of us, being able to seek guidance from those folks in the community who have done it, and really we can look to for that sage wisdom. And so for both of you, I want to ask, Olivia, you've since graduated from the University of Michigan, and you're going on to do incredible things. And I want to ask both Professor Shirley and you, why is it important to you all to continue this mentorship and this relationship that you all have, past the academic setting, and how have you seen that manifest as you enter, the professional life of a singer and carrying on past academia? And for you, Professor Shirley, why might it be important to continue these relationships with your students outside of the university or beyond their tenure there?
Well, for me, working with a student is the beginning of a friendship. And friendships should continue to grow rather than be truncated by the departure of the student from the classroom or from the studio. So I'm always interested in what happens post graduation, following their careers, seeing them realize their dreams, and sometimes seeing that the work that we've done together has not led them to the stage as performers, but has had positive growth effects that have led them in a different direction. I think of one of my former students who took his doctorate with me, and he went into teaching, taught at the university level for a couple of years, his marriage didn't work out, and he remarried a soprano whose management he was not happy with. So he gave up his teaching position and apprenticed himself to Columbia Artists Management, which was one of the biggest managements a number of years ago. And he finished his apprenticeship with the Barrett Agency. And he's now one of the most active artists managers in New York City, Robert Mirshak. All of his training prepared him to do what he's doing so successfully, managing singers. So there are others who've gone into other areas of business, of what have you. And I like to stay in touch, and first of all, to see if what we shared when they were students, what effect it has had or continues to have in their lives post University of Michigan. And seeing them raise families. So what are your children interested in doing? Are they going into music, or what do they want to do? So it becomes a friendship, hopefully. For those who don't quite get an A, can't always guarantee that the friendship will continue or will happen. But I try even there to, if I don't feel that a work has been done, to explain why I feel that way, and to illuminate those areas that I think they need to spend more attention, pay more attention to.
Definitely, yeah, that's beautiful, and yeah, it's such an humbling experience to be around somebody that has the grace and humility to be able to say, I care for all of my students and see them all the way through, regardless of the path that they intend to go on. So thank you for being you, Professor Shirley. Olivia, kind of on the other side of that, I'm curious, why have you seen it important to, continue your friendship and mentorship with Professor Shirley? And I'm sure that there are other mentors out there and other folks out there that you've continued this relationship with outside of the academic setting, instead of saying, I'm a professional now, I'm done with my teachers, which there are folks who might subscribe to that model, but I know you not to be one of them. So I'm curious about that.
Yeah, the one thing I really noted about Professor Shirley was how humble he was. And my parents, they met him before he became my teacher when I was doing Dorabella for Così fan tutte at the University of Michigan. And Professor Shirley came out of his way and he greeted them. And he commented on my voice and he said, "She's doing a good job," something to that nature. And my parents were like, wow, he was really a lovely person. And then actually my second year of master's here, I had my recital here. And Professor Shirley came up to my family and I while we were unloading the car. And then Professor Shirley was like, what can I grab? And I'm like, nothing. He's like, I'm going to grab something. And that nature and that humility, I want to mirror my career after. Because it's one thing to be a great performer, but I think it's also even more amazing if you're a wonderful person. And a giving person. And Professor Shirley, I can honestly say, believes in me. And as a performer, I truly believe that you need to surround yourself with people that believe in you, because it's very difficult. And sometimes you will get down. And I've had conversations with Professor Shirley where I will say, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. And he'll talk me through it. And it's never to say that you should do this, but what are the steps? What are you afraid of? What what can you do better? And I appreciate that. Like, all the mentors that I have in my life are just humble, wonderful human beings that believe in me, and their faith in me gives me more courage.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Everything that you all have said is just beautiful all the way through, and again, it's so lovely to hear that. I want to transition a little bit and talk a little bit about, both of your performance careers, but also how you've seen your career as a whole thus far, and I want to go back to Professor Shirley, and it's, it's not a secret that Professor Shirley, you are one of the most prolific, genius, talented human beings that to grace this earth, and in addition to being an incredible performer, just from the start, have been committed to passing on, the music and being an educator as well as a performer. And what I'm curious to know from you is what motivates you or drives you to pass on this legacy of music, and anybody in your position could say, I'm a performer through and through, and this is what I've done, and this is what I continue to do, and obviously you continue to be an active performer. For those of you at home, Professor Shirley quite literally is currently in a production in South Carolina and flew back to grace our presence today and be with us and perform with us today, and is flying back. And yes, so thank you again, Professor Shirley. But I want to talk about, why is it always been important to you to be doing this kind of mentorship and kind of education, in addition to being such a prolific performer?
Well, I started my professional life as a teacher on the high school level in Detroit. I started teaching in 1955, the semester I graduated from Wayne University.
Wow.
I was assigned a position as an emergency substitute at Miller High School in Detroit. Miller was one of two basically black high schools. I went to Northern, which was the other basically black high school. And my desire to become a teacher was whetted by my experience in the public schools of Detroit, which at that time arguably had the best system of music education in the country, public school music education. Great musicians graduated from Detroit's high schools, from Cass Tech, from Miller, from Northern. When I started teaching at Miller, I found out that the great guitarist Kenny Burrell, the singer Della Reese, and I think either Yusef Lateef or Ahmad Jamal, I can't remember, one of the two. And I think the vibraharpist who's with the Modern Jazz Quartet, I think
Milt Jackson.
I think he was a graduate of Miller. Year behind me as a student was Smokey Robinson. When I was at the Met, there were about 3 or 4 singers, a couple of them at the Met and at City Opera, who were from Detroit. So Detroit's music education, public school music education system was, as I said, one of the best, if not the best in the country. And from elementary school on, we had a music teacher, in first grade, a music teacher who had his or her own space, own classroom with everything they needed to teach youngsters how to become musically literate. By the time you were in the 6th grade, if you had any talent at all, you could read music. And in high school, my high school music teacher, Claire Weimer, who was Canadian by birth but worked in the United States, she challenged us with music that was every bit as demanding as the music given to the students at Cass Tech or McKinsey High or the other high schools that were basically white. I started singing tenor solos in Messiah in the 11th grade. We did Messiah every year. And this was with organ, not an orchestra. And there was an alumni chorus that came back to join us, of students years before. My first experience singing anything from the Verdi Requiem was on one of our spring concerts, when we did the Kyrie and I sang the tenor solos. This is the kind of musical education I had, plus the fact that my parents started me with voice lessons when I was 14, because I started singing with them when I was 4 years old in Indianapolis. My parents were both musical. My mother might have had 1 year of college, I don't know, but she had a lovely soprano voice. My dad played 3 instruments, all by ear: fiddle, guitar, and piano. He could hear something once, sit down and figure out the chords and play it. He was my first accompanist. So I was surrounded by music. And my experience in Northern High School convinced me I want to be a music teacher. I played in a little community band that was formed at my church, played euphonium, and that was my scholarship at Wayne University. I went in with a band scholarship.
Wow.
Which was great because I was the only singer in the band, and it was a wonderful expansion of my awareness, my musical appreciation. So, focused on becoming a music teacher. That was my focus, that was my love. And it was while I was drafted into the Army. I went in as a bandsman, but decided once I was in to go and audition for this new organization, the United States Army Chorus, that was founded in 1956. And much to my surprise, they accepted me. I was the first black member of the chorus and of the United States Army Band organization. And I found out years later that the captain who was conducting the chorus at that time, a Russian-American named Samuel Loboda, had to go all the way to the Pentagon to get me in. And that's the way things were at that time. So that was a disruption. I didn't want to go into the Army. And the chorus was a 3-year commitment. I didn't want to spend 3 years in. So when I went and auditioned, they let me in. They didn't insist on my taking the 3rd year. So, great. Got into the chorus, and one of the members of the chorus, a fellow named Jack Gillespie, who sang in Germany for a number of years as a tenor. He was a baritone, of course, but became a tenor. Came back and ran the opera program at Texas Tech, producing singers like Susan Graham and the black bass Terry Cook and others. Jack became a very close friend, like a brother. And he kept insisting that I come and study with the man he was working with in Washington. A lot of the members of the chorus were studying privately to keep their skills up, because they were all wonderful singers who wanted to have careers, many of them. And just to shut him up one day, I said, okay, he just kept bugging me. So I went and sang for this old tenor who had had a career in Germany, in the United States. And because I sang, I just said, I went this to shut Jack up and get him off my back. And the old fellow looked at me after I sang for him. He said, well, you study with me 1 year and I guarantee you'll have a career. Well, no one had ever said that to me before, and I'd been singing solos in high school and college and so forth. Actually sang my first opera in my senior year at Wayne when the Glee Club director came and said, I want to do Oedipus Rex. Take a look at the role of Oedipus. We didn't have an opera program. It was a music education school. So we did it. I sang 3 performances of Oedipus at the Jesse Bonsdale Playhouse in Detroit. I enjoyed it thoroughly, but it didn't say to me, this is going to be your professional path. Teaching is it. So I started teaching, and at the end of my first year, I got a letter from Uncle Sam that said, guess what? You're going to be married to me for the next 2 years. The draft was still in place, but Korea had ended about a year before I graduated. So had no choice. So I went in as a bandsman, and after about 3 weeks of playing the flag up, and I thought, nah, not that. So I decided to go to Washington and audition, and they, to my surprise, took me in. So I decided when this old fella said that, I said I told my wife, because we had gotten married a week before I had to go into the service. I said, I told her what had happened. And she said, well, whatever you want to do is all right with me. Her second mistake. So I decided I would sign up for the extra year to have benefits and income to take care of my wife and my infant daughter. And so I started intense study with this old tenor. And at the end of the third year, I learned maybe a couple of operatic arias. That was about it. I didn't know, you didn't listen to opera in my household. So I decided I'd enter the Met auditions. This was spring of 1959, so I entered, and I lost. But at the reception, the two judges from New York came over to me. One was Howard Hook, who ran the auditions, the chairman of the auditions, and John Gutman, who was one of Rudolph Bing's assistant managers. And they said, we like what we heard you do. We want you to know that. But we don't think you're ready to go to New York City yet to appear in the semifinals. Keep doing what you're doing. That's all I needed. I won. And I had already signed a contract to begin my career with a small company in Woodstock, New York, singing 5 roles, all in English. And that all happened. And I tell my students this. I said, do the work that's in front of your nose because you never know the path. In 1957, before all these things happened that I just told you about, the chorus took a trip to California to sing for an ROTC convention. On the way back, the captain had arranged a concert with the Denver Symphony Orchestra at the Red Rocks Amphitheater. So we had about 3 days free, and three of my friends and I, we hired a car and we took off into the mountains, went to see the campus of the University of Colorado, and wound up in Central City in the late afternoon. Central City is a big old gold mining town, and it has an opera house. So we were walking down the main street, and one of our members, our Barbarian, who was from Southfield, took a degree in law from the University of Michigan, sang in the Glee Club, was not a music student, but then wound up singing for 22 years at the Metropolitan Opera as a leading bass.
Wow.
Go figure. So we were walking down the street, and Ara sees someone that he was in law school with at Michigan. This fellow was the chief tour guide for the summer and also the head usher for the opera. So we wound up with 5 tickets to see Rigoletto, starring Frank Guerrera, who was one of the leading baritones of the Met. Soprano named Joan Carroll, American, who was having a great career in Germany but had been invited back to sing Gilda in this summer season at Central City. And the tenor was a fellow named John Crane. And I sat there listening to John Crane rattle the walls. And I thought, it's a good thing I never wanted to become an opera singer, because I couldn't do that all night long. Little realizing that 4 years later, I would make my debut at the Metropolitan Opera with Frank Guerrera and Così fan tutte. And 2 years later, sing the role of Alva in Alban Berg's Lulu, the American premiere of Lulu at Santa Fe with Joan Carroll. So when people say, yeah, you've done all these things, look what you've done. I say, I didn't ask to do any of it. From my point of view, I've become a determinist. I believe that everything that I've done, good or bad, was given to me in a script that I was handed when I was conceived. I didn't ask for a voice. I didn't ask for a desire to do this or that. I didn't ask to be born. But I was, and I was given my script, and I followed my script, not knowing that I was following my script. So when people say, I've done all these things, I can only be grateful for having been given the script to follow, to do them.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you. That's, yeah, so beautiful. And also, you know, as Olivia mentioned, the humility in everything that you say, it's tremendous, and it's such an honor and privilege to have you here speaking with us. I want to transition over to you, Olivia, and, you know, one of the other parts of this series is pairing folks, you know, who have had an illustrious career, as Professor Shirley mentioned, with folks that we really believe are destined, to have careers similar, and I think one of the questions that comes up when we ask our young musicians about their careers, is the state of opera, or the state of music at large, or the state of the world is a much different place right now in 2022 than it was when Professor Shirley was your age, for instance. It's quite different. And the question that I have for you, Olivia, is, now that you're in the professional sphere and you're rising, and it's a meteoric rise, really, in a lot of ways, what excites you about the current state of music and your field specifically, and what are some things that you're really eager to do and perhaps, hope to address in the current state of things, and just what excites you about the current state of affairs in the field?
I feel very thankful right now, because I feel like more than ever, the opportunities for a Black opera singer are really there. And it's a lot due to Black Opera Alliance and all the people that are heading this movement, and even starting from Black Lives Matter, that has basically spurred the hearts of opera houses to make a change and to offer more opportunities. This beginning of the season, I was a part of Blue, and then just this past week, and honestly, I finished Malcolm X as one of the ensemble members, which was very hard because there was 12 of us, so one apart, and best of luck. But just to be a part of those moments has been so enriching and amazing, and to know that having those opportunities are opening more jobs, because Blue took me to Seattle in the beginning of this year to cover, and I even got a call from another opera house to come and cover for Blue. So these wonderful opportunities, these operas that are written for us, are opening more doors for us. And I'm thankful that there's more librettists and more composers, and that we're looking and paying attention to composers that are alive. I know that we are all about tradition in the world of opera, but I believe that we should honor those who are still with us, and create with those and collaborate with those who are still with us. There are so many opportunities by doing that. And I've just been so blessed for the past season to just meet every composer that I'm singing for, and just being able to tap into that. How I am going to continue to hone this energy and this wonderful new movement. Actually, I have a recital next Thursday in Ypsilanti with Apex Contemporary Performance for the Apex Fest, where I will be singing song cycles by Black female composers. And in between song sets, I will be presenting my own spoken word. But the journey of creating this recital through the inspiration of Goswana Kanyenda and Samantha Williams and so many other wonderful Black women, including my mother and my grandmother, I would email all of the composers because they're alive. I made it a point to make sure that each composer was alive, so that anyone can hear their music and want to tap into that and actually have a conversation with them about their music, and to know that there's more Black composers than the ones that are gone, and that we've been honoring by using diversity, equity, inclusion with different projects, but to know that there's more and they're alive and here with us. So by being able to talk to them and to collaborate was just actually far more exciting than I thought it would be. And I'm realizing, I'm like, oh, I love putting together recitals, and I love talking to composers. And a few of the composers I will be working to sing in my recital is B.E. Boykin, Regina Harris-Bayaki, Jacqueline Hairston, Jasmine Barnes, and they were all wonderful people that, the ones that I contacted, all responded to me. So I think we should move on and go forward with opera, and stop looking back so much. Yeah, there's so many opportunities. Yeah.
That's, beautiful in so many ways, and the optimism that that in which you speak, I think it's a perspective that all of us should be sharing, as we enter, coming out of this pandemic and just being in a new world in a lot of different ways, it's really a beautifully optimistic time to be here, so it's wonderful that you've been able to see that already, and I think it's just the beginning, and I think a lot of the trajectory that opera is taking in all musics and just in all fields, I think that it is really just the start, and it's a really beautiful thing to see continue to grow, so.
It's very interesting. America is nothing if not operatic. The plots of the great operas are about life. And looking at American history, it's a rich field of possibilities for opera libretti, opera stories, about our history, about American history. People have wondered, a lot of people, I guess most people in this country, opera, you'll be joking. I'm not going to go hear something that's in a foreign language. But doing what's being done now, composers creating works that reflect American life. Some of the white composers have done this, Carlisle Floyd, Susanna, for instance, Life in the South. It's a popular work. But to create works that the audience can see themselves reflected in will be the future of a healthy operatic life in this country. You can call it opera if you want to, call it musical theater if you want to, because musical theater is a form of, quote, opera. Opera means work, and musical theater works are works, they're operas. But something that reflects life in America. Bernstein did it with West Side Story. That's an opera, basically. We say it's a musical style is a little different, but the story is one that grabs people. It's about life in this country. So opening our eyes to all of what life is like in this country and having our composers, our talented composers who can create these works, do so, means this country is going to find itself more strongly represented abroad with works that reflect the truth of life in America. So this is great stuff.
Wonderful, yes. I want to take some time right now to see if there are any audience questions. Anybody in the audience have something that they would like to ask? Yes, Maury?
We were followers and friends of Miss Jessie Norman. And I saw her give a master class here where the pronunciation of whatever language she was teaching in was so very important to her, that you had the right expression or the right emotion on the. Do you find that foreign languages in opera are not easy, but welcome, you might say?
Definitely. I'm just going to restate the question for the folks that are listening on the live stream here. Maury mentioned the great Jessie Norman, and one of the greatest singers of our time, and a University of Michigan graduate, and how she had fantastic, incredible prowess over all of the languages that she sang in, and that asking that question of both you, Olivia, and of you, Professor Shirley, and how have you been able to navigate that, and how does that come easy to you, or is it something that's more difficult? And thank you, Maury, for that question.
Professor Shirley made sure that before I left him and the University of Michigan that I had a good understanding of each language that is standard to this genre of music. It's not something that actually came easy to me. And it's not something I felt that I truly had a grasp on until I worked with Professor Shirley. I remember the first time I came to him, I brought O Malir Immortel from Sappho by Charles Gounod. And he would clap each time I sang something wrong. I did not get through that aria very quickly. We stopped every 2 measures, but just that detail and that love of the language, and honestly making that his legacy and passing that on to me was so important, and I will say is also a part of my success that I have now. Even though I'm just beginning, I'm finding that people appreciate and love and respect the fact that I honor the text, even if it isn't my language. I remember when I was participating in Ames in Austria, I believe in 2016, the summer, and I was working with this lovely Italian coach, and after I left the stage, she told me, "Thank you for loving my language." And I thought to myself, oh, that's worth everything, to go to someone else that you don't speak their language and to sing to them and to be able to give that love and respect to their language and to have it understood. That meant a lot to me. So yes, I believe it is very, very important, especially because we are supposed to be communicators and storytellers first, I believe.
Amen to that.
In this, all that you've been through, how did you remain humble? What made you continue to want to be humble? Because some people get the big head. So, can you explain that to me?
Definitely. We just to, for the for the live stream folks, Mrs. Johnson, who's in the house with us, Olivia's mother, give a little round of applause for her. Thanks for being with us. Asked, after Professor Shirley, you've gone through so much and lived through so much. How have you managed to remain humble through that entire experience, and how has your head not gotten big, as most of ours would?
Well, I can't say that there have been times when my head began to swell. But then there would always be something that came along that, like a pinprick in a balloon, make it get back to normal. And at this point in my life, I understand, again, as I said earlier, that I'm not responsible for any of it. If I say I'm responsible for all my mistakes, then it follows that I would say I'm responsible for all my successes. But I know that my successes have been because of what I've been given to do. I'm grateful for those. And the mistakes have been there too, for me to learn from, for me to stumble and fall and get up and scrape myself off and learn from. So I don't mind being a robot for the intelligence that has created life. That doesn't bother me. And it helps me to keep the playing field level. When something goes well, not for me to burst myself. I used to sing a song to the poem Invictus. Great poem. And it was a great setting. Out of the night that covers me black as a pit, from pole to pole I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance my head is bloody but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how strait the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. I don't believe those last two sentences, or that last sentence at all, because I am not the master of my fate. I never have been. I'm not the captain of my soul. My motto has become, every passing day, every new day is for God to know and me to find out. I don't know what's going to happen the next moment, whether I'm going to be able to get up from this chair and walk off of this stage. If I were the master of my fate and the captain of my soul, I would be, yeah. And I can say, yeah. And I can fall flat on my face. So all I can do is be grateful. So big head, that ain't gonna happen anymore. But let me go back to the words. The nature of sound. What is the nature of sound? It's to carry a message. I've said this before. If you're walking along at night and you hear something behind you go, you better turn around and find out what it is. There's a message in that. So as singers, we've got to understand that it's more than just making beautiful sounds. When words are added, those words are there to be communicated, not only with clarity of diction, but with the impregnated with the meaning and the emotion that makes the speaker choose those words to say, to express himself or herself. For a singer just to sing the syllables clearly is not singing the words. Words have stress. Words of more than one syllable have a stress to them. Important words have something to them. For instance, La Bohème. For the tenor, it starts with pitches that are the same pitch on the same level. Da 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 dee, da da da. There's only one of those that really the music stresses properly. And quite often, the singer will sing, Che gelida manina se la lasci riscaldar. Yeah, okay. But if I sing the words, Che gelida manina se la lasci riscaldar, that's different. And the Italians will understand that because I have sung the words. Che gelida manina se la lasci riscaldar. Not che gelida manina se la lasci riscaldar. So composers will inevitably, it seems, write a melody, they have a melody in mind, a rhythm, with very little consideration of the proper pronunciation of the words. They will quite often write the unstressed syllable on a higher pitch or on the first pitch of a new measure. So the singer who is not really considering the words but is concerned with the flow, che gelida manina se la lasci riscaldare, will not sing the words, will sing the syllables. And there's nothing more frustrating for an audience to hear syllables sung rather than words when words are present. I make up a little thing like if the melody is this. Ba ba bee, ba 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 bee ba. That's a nice melody, but let me put words to it. I'm going to the store today. What? No. I'm going to the store today. Ah. That's what it's supposed to be. So I spend a lot of time stressing the importance of singing words rather than syllables. First time I went to Italy, in 1960, I won a competition with other American singers, the American Opera auditions. And it took the American singers to Italy to make debuts in Milan and Florence. And the Italian winners came to the United States to make their debuts at the Cincinnati Opera during the summer. The Italians don't necessarily think of singers as being musically very capable. So in an opera, that's the reason why you have a prompter. Prompter is there to give you the first word of every sentence you sing. Okay, sit, lie. So we arrived, and we found that the officials had put aside an entire month to teach us the music, make sure we had the music and the words. And we said, oh, we know the music. The first rehearsal was with our conductor who played the piano. We were introduced to an old fellow who had been a prompter at La Scala. Maestro, so-and-so. So he sat down in front of us. He opened his score, placed it on the music stand. He was ready to give us every single word, beginning of the sentence. And we said, but we don't need a prompter. We don't use a prompter. And he was incensed. He slammed his score shut, folded his arms, and sat there in front of us like this. Right. So we sang through the whole thing, didn't make any mistakes. And at the end of it, I could swear to you, he looked like he was going to cry. Because he had never witnessed singers who knew the music and didn't need his assistance. All of the officials gathered in the corner, gesticulating and looking over their shoulders, because they put aside an entire month to teach us what they didn't think we could possibly have known. Finally, they decided that they would bring us in every day, including weekends, to work on the pronunciation. We thought, the best thing they could have done for us. The reviews from opening night said, but of course, the Americans can learn something about singing from the Italians. You see, ma la pronuncia era ottima. The pronunciation was excellent. E qual disinvoltura sul palcoscenico. What freedom on stage. Well, yeah, we were free to, I could sing towards me and make it look like I was singing toward, I could still see the conductor out of the corner of my eye because I'd been taught to do that by Boris Kotowski. But such freedom on stage, yeah, because we weren't glued to the prompter and the conductor. So, the importance of singing the language perfectly was noted in headlines by the press. And that taught me a lesson. Words. If the words are there, then sing the words and not the syllables. It's the taste of languages, the taste of German is different from the taste of Italian, from the taste of French, from the taste of English. And that is part of the work that singers who want an international career have got to engage in. One of the best things that can ever happen to you when you walk off stage and you meet the public is for them to start speaking to you in their language. And you have to say, ma scusi, ma io, il vocabolario, no. But you know that you have struck them where they live. And they appreciate your appreciation and respect for their culture. So the words, voice, yeah, but the words delivered with clarity of diction, perfection of diction, and with a connection to the place where we feel emotion. Solar plexus. Often I've asked students, what is your solar plexus? Well, I'm not. I said it's a place behind your sternum, at the top of your belly, in the middle of your body, where all of your nerve endings come together. It's where you feel butterflies, where you feel things, where you feel emotion. Mm-hmm. For singers, it's really important to be in touch with that place. It's one of the reasons why the old teachers say, sing from the diaphragm. Well, you can't sing from the diaphragm because there's no mouth down there. But you can be in touch with that place, that chakra, behind where the diaphragm is attached to the sternum. Your mind, your solar plexus, and out of your solar plexus comes a nerve called the vagus nerve. Not Las Vegas, but Vegas. It wraps around your heart and is attached to your larynx. So when you sing, be on that highway, mind to solar plexus, to heart, to throat. And when that is alive, the audience has got to feel what you are singing. Even if they don't understand the words, they will know that something is touching them inside. If that pathway is not operative, then well, it's a really lovely voice, but
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Professor, for that. Yeah. That's about all that we have time for today for this Q&A, but I just want to say one more time, thank you so much, Professor Shirley and Olivia, for joining us today for this Q&A, and we hope that you can join us tonight for the concert at 8 p.m. It's going to be absolutely phenomenal, and for those folks watching on the live stream, that'll also be available to be streamed at 8 p.m., and all of our streams are for free online. We do appreciate a donation in lieu of a ticket purchase, but we hope you can join us then. And thank you so much, and we hope to see you at 8 p.m.
Thank you.
And thank you to our in-house folks,
Yes,
small
thank
but
you for
mighty.
coming.